What do you think poverty is? Most people would say it's just not having enough money. It's earning less, buying less, and living with less. It's a state of limited consumption. But that's not the whole story. The truth is much more complex and, frankly, much more painful. Because poverty doesn't just mean having less money. It often means you end up spending more. Poverty is expensive. I'm not talking metaphorically or emotionally. I mean in a literal, measurable dollars and cents way. Economists call this the poverty premium. It's a pattern so unfair and so widespread that once you see it, you can never unsee it. It means that the less you have, the more you pay for almost everything. And it's not because you're bad with money or irresponsible. It's because the system itself is structured to punish those who start with the least. Let's start with something we all understand: transportation. Imagine you need a car to get to work. The smartest long-term choice would be a reliable, newer, fuel-efficient car. It would have fewer maintenance issues and save you money over time. But the upfront cost? It's completely out of reach. So what do? You buy the cheapest car you can find. Something old, worn out. Something that's already lived a very long, hard life. At first, it feels like a win. You found a car you can actually afford. But that feeling doesn't last. Cheap cars break down. They leak oil. They guzzle gas. Within a few weeks, you're paying for unexpected repairs. Within a few months, the money you've spent just fixing the car adds up to more than the monthly payments on a much better vehicle would have been. But that better car was never an option for you. This is the poverty premium in action. You pay more because you can't afford to pay less. And transportation is just the beginning. Let's look at groceries. People with more money shop differently. They buy in bulk at warehouse stores. They take advantage of 2-for-1 deals and stock up when things are on sale. They have the cash on hand and the storage space to plan ahead. This drives their cost per item way down. Now, consider someone struggling financially. They shop based on what they can carry and what they can afford today. They buy 1 can of soup, not a case. 1 packet of ramen noodles, not a whole box. 1 small bag of rice, not a 20-pound sack. The result? They pay a higher price for the exact same product, from the exact same shelf, in the exact same store, simply because they can't afford the discount that comes with buying in bulk. Banks are another perfect example. If you have money, banks reward you. You get free checking accounts, no monthly fees, credit cards that give you cash back, and access to loans with low interest rates. Borrowing is easy, and if you make a small mistake, the consequences are minimal. But for someone with very little money, the banking system can feel like a predator. Overdraft fees, account maintenance fees, penalties for not meeting a minimum balance, high-interest credit cards, payday loans. Cash advances, each one is a financial trap disguised as a helpful service. The less money you have, the more of these traps you encounter. You're charged fees simply for not having enough money, which of course makes you have even less money. Housing follows the exact same brutal logic. If you can't afford a down payment for a house, you have to rent. And over a lifetime, renting is almost always more expensive than owning. You pay month after month, but you build zero equity. You have no long-term stability, and you often end up paying more for worse living conditions. People with financial security can choose to live in neighborhoods with good schools, safe streets, and plenty of resources. People without that security don't get to choose. They live in the only place they can afford. They often pay more for smaller spaces in older buildings, in areas with higher crime rates, an environment that constantly drains your mental and emotional energy. The poverty premium isn't just about dollars. It's paid in stress, in safety, and in lost opportunities. And then there are emergencies. For someone with savings, an unexpected bill is an annoyance. A flat tire is an inconvenience. But for a person living paycheck to paycheck, an emergency is a catastrophe. A $40 repair for a tire isn't just $40. It's the difference between getting to work and losing your job. An unexpected medical bill isn't just a headache. It's the start of a debt spiral you might never escape. A lost phone isn't just inconvenient. It means you've lost your alarm clock, your connection to work, your access to online banking, your entire lifeline to the modern world. Emergencies cost more when you have no cushion to fall back on. But maybe the most insidious cost of poverty is something called mental bandwidth. When you are constantly worried about money, your brain is always on high alert. You're always calculating, always budgeting, always preparing for the next thing to go wrong. This state of constant vigilance is exhausting. It leads to something called decision fatigue, where every single choice, no matter how small, feels heavy and consequential. Every price tag matters. Every dollar spent feels like a risk. This mental exhaustion leads to mistakes that cost more money, more time, and more opportunities. These are mistakes that wealthier people never even have to think about making. Poverty steals your clarity. It steals your ability to think ahead, to plan, to strategize, and to make the long-term choices that could change your life. Finally, let's talk about time. Time is a hidden currency. Wealthy people use their money to buy more time. They'd pay for faster commutes, for food delivery, for services and tools that make their lives more efficient. Poor people do the opposite. They spend their time to save money. They take long bus rides instead of driving. They stand in long lines at social service offices. They deal with slow bureaucratic processes. Over months and years, all those lost hours add up. That's time that could have been spent learning a new skill, resting, or finding better opportunities. The truth is simple, and it's tragic. Being poor is not cheap. It's an expensive subscription you never signed up for, with monthly fees that never end, penalties you never agreed to, and hidden charges for the simple act of existing with less than you need. And until we all understand this premium, this invisible tax that is placed on the poor, we can even begin to have a real conversation about fixing the systems that keep people trapped. When people talk about poverty, they often imagine it as a simple numbers problem, an issue of income versus expenses. But poverty is not just about having less money. It's about spending more for the things every human needs to survive: food, shelter, transportation, health, and time. These aren't luxuries. They're the basic components of life. And yet, for millions of people, these basics cost far more than they should. To understand why, we need to look at how the system treats two people differently: one who has savings, credit, and financial stability, and one who is living paycheck to paycheck. On paper, they live in the same city, shop in the same stores, and use the same services. But the prices they pay, both financially and emotionally, are dramatically different. Let's start with something we all consume every day: food. Most people take grocery shopping for granted. You walk into a store, compare prices, choose the best value, and buy what makes sense long term. But when you're poor, the ability to plan ahead disappears. You don't have $40 today to buy a large sack of rice that will last you a month. You have $5 to buy something that lasts you a day or two. You don't have the luxury of comparing unit prices. You're stuck comparing what you can afford this moment. This creates a cycle where small purchases, tiny convenience-sized items, end up costing significantly more per meal than the bulk options wealthy people buy without thinking. This price gap isn't because poor people make bad decisions. It's because they are forced to operate in survival mode. They're not thinking about next week's meals. They're thinking about tonight's. The same divide appears in the world of banking. Wealthy people are rewarded for having money. They get checking accounts with no fees, credit cards that give rewards, and low-interest loans that cost them less over time. They have financial cushions that protect them from penalties. But poor people are punished for not having enough. Every step becomes a fee. Not enough money in your account? You get charged. Accidentally overdraft by a few dollars? You get charged more than the mistake itself. Need money before payday? You're offered predatory loans with interest rates so high they can drown you for years. Banks claim these fees are about risk, but the truth is simpler. The system is designed to extract as much money as possible from the people who have the least. And then there's housing, which is perhaps the clearest example of how the poor pay more for less. Owning a home is one of the most powerful engines of wealth. But if you don't have savings or credit, homeownership becomes impossible. So you rent. And renting, ironically, often costs more per month than a mortgage would. Worse, you're paying that money without building any equity. You have no long-term gain, no stability, no asset. You're simply moving someone else up the financial ladder while struggling to stay on yours. Even the quality of housing is affected. Wealthy people live in neighborhoods with better schools, safer streets, faster emergency services, and more reliable infrastructure. Poor people are pushed into areas where rent may be cheaper, but costs pile up through crime, noise, old buildings, lack of maintenance, and long commutes. A cracked pipe in a wealthy home gets fixed in a day. The same pipe in a low-income apartment might take weeks, creating mold, health issues, and more stress. This leads to another hidden cost of poverty: emergencies. A person with savings sees an emergency as a setback. A person without savings sees an emergency as a crisis that threatens their ability to function. A flat tire isn't just a flat tire. It's missed work, lost income, late fees, more stress, and possibly more debt. A medical bill isn't just a bill. It's a burden that takes months or years to recover from. A broken appliance isn't just an inconvenience. It's a financial blow that disrupts a fragile ecosystem of survival. Emergencies cost more when you re poor because you don't have the financial buffer to absorb them. You can't prevent problems before they happen. You only react often at higher financial and emotional costs. But one of the deepest hidden costs of being poor is the psychological pressure. Living in poverty means living with constant mental noise. Every decision matters. Every dollar must be analyzed. Every potential expense feels like a threat. This creates a mental tax that wealthier people never experience. When you're mentally exhausted, you're more likely to make mistakes. When you're anxious, overwhelmed, or stressed, your ability to plan, organize, and execute long-term decisions decreases. This isn't a character flaw. It's how the human brain reacts to scarcity. This psychological weight creates three major traps. The first is tunnel vision, where your brain focuses entirely on the immediate crisis. You can't think about next month because today is a battlefield. The second is decision fatigue, where the constant pressure to make perfect choices drains your willpower and leads to exhaustion. The third is learned helplessness, where repeated setbacks convince you that progress is impossible, so your brain stops trying to change the situation. And then there's time. Wealthy people buy time. Poor people lose time. Commuting by bus instead of driving can add hours to your day. Waiting in lines for services, filling out paperwork, navigating public systems, all of these tasks steal time and energy that could be spent on rest, education, side jobs, or self-improvement. Over years, the accumulation of lost time becomes a hidden form of poverty itself. Even health becomes more expensive. Chronic stress produces cortisol, which impacts sleep, appetite, weight, immune function, and decision-making. Poorer individuals often have worse diets, worse sleep, less stable routines, and less access to medical care. Illness becomes more common, more severe, and more expensive. And each health problem forces more missed work, more bills, and more anxiety. The most painful truth is this: the system is structured so that the poor pay penalties, while the wealthy receive discounts. The rich are rewarded for having money. The poor are punished for lacking it. This is the hidden cost of being poor, a web of financial, psychological, and systemic pressures that create a higher cost of living for those who can least afford it. Understanding the hidden cost of being poor is the first step, but it's not the last one. Once you truly see the traps, financial, psychological, and systemic, you can begin to escape them. Not instantly, not easily, not with magic solutions or motivational slogans. Escaping poverty is not about one big breakthrough. It's about avoiding one trap at a time, building stability piece by piece, and creating small but intentional advantages that accumulate over months and years. In this final part, we explore the most practical strategies that anyone can use, no matter how limited their starting point. These strategies won't erase systemic barriers, but they will help you navigate them with a clearer mind, a stronger foundation, and a more resilient path forward. Let's begin with something simple but powerful: a mini emergency fund. When most people hear emergency fund, they imagine saving $500 or $1,000 numbers that feel impossible for someone barely getting by. But the truth is different. The power of an emergency fund comes from the first few dollars, not the last. The first $50 saved is more impactful than the next $500. Why? Because $50 can prevent dozens of small emergencies from becoming large ones. It can buy groceries when you're short on cash. It can cover a copay. It can replace a broken phone charger so you don't miss work. It can stop a late fee before it snowballs. A tiny buffer creates breathing room, and breathing room creates better decisions. The next strategy is shifting from reactive money to proactive money. Most people living in poverty don't manage their finances, they react to their finances. Their money comes in and it disappears to bills, to debt, to late fees, to urgent problems. There's no planning, only reaction. But if you can pause once a week and ask one question: what problem can I prevent this month? You change the direction of your finances. You move from surviving to anticipating. Maybe you buy a cheap tire repair kit to avoid a future tow truck bill. Maybe you pay a small balance early to avoid a large fee. Maybe you cook in bulk to prevent impulsive food spending. Proactive money is cheaper than reactive money. Another powerful tool is automation. The human brain is terrible at willpower but excellent at routines. Automation turns good intentions into results. If you can automate just $5 a week towards savings, yes, just $5, it creates momentum. You build a habit. You start seeing progress you didn't have to think about. Over time, $5 becomes $10, then $20, and eventually something bigger. But the key is starting with something tiny and automatic, not something large and fragile. To fight the psychological cost of poverty, you must also reduce decision fatigue. When every decision feels important, every decision drains energy. The solution is consistency. Eat the same breakfast. Use the same shopping list. Pay the same bills on the same day. Create a predictable routine that reduces the number of choices you need to make. When your brain is less exhausted, you make better decisions with the money you do have. Stability creates clarity. Another essential step is avoiding high-interest traps. Payday loans, rent-to-own stores, cash advances, and credit cards with predatory rates are designed to keep you stuck. They solve today's problem while creating 5 new ones tomorrow. Whenever possible, explore community credit unions, negotiate payment plans, or rely on low-interest alternatives. These options may seem slower, but they are dramatically cheaper. One of the most transformative escape tools is learning one new skill, not a degree. Not a 4-year program, not a massive commitment. Just one skill that increases your earning potential. Income is the lever that lifts everything. Skill-based income editing, design, writing, coding basics, sales, customer service, marketing operations can raise your hourly value permanently. And many of the world's most valuable skills are free to learn online. A new skill doesn't just increase your income, it increases your confidence. It expands your options. It reduces the feeling of helplessness. And over time, it can completely change your relationship with money. Another key concept is micro-stability. People often believe they need a large breakthrough to escape poverty, like a promotion, a windfall, or a new job. But in reality, what they need most at the beginning is just a little stability. If your life becomes 10% more stable, your financial progress becomes 50% easier. Micro-stability means fewer emergencies. Fewer surprises. Fewer last-minute expenses. It means keeping your phone charged, organizing your bills, getting to bed on time, and reducing chaos at home. Every small improvement compounds. And then there's time, one of the most valuable resources the poor are forced to sacrifice. Buying back your time is part of the escape plan. This doesn't mean spending money you don't have. It means identifying time leaks. Long commutes, long waits, long processes. Find ways to compress or optimize them. Could you combine trips? Could you automate tasks? Could you prepare meals in bulk to save hours every week? Time savings accumulate like money savings. The less time you waste, the more time you can invest in rest, skills, side jobs, or personal growth. At a deeper level, escaping the hidden costs of poverty requires overcoming the psychological traps of scarcity. When you've spent years or decades fighting crisis after crisis, it's easy to fall into learned helplessness, the belief that nothing will change, so effort isn't worth it. But this belief isn't true. What feels like failure is often exhaustion. What feels like lack of progress is often a lack of stability. The moment you experience even small wins, saving $20, paying a bill early, learning a new skill, your belief system begins to shift. You start to see that you're not powerless. You're navigating a system designed to be difficult. And the moment you see the system clearly, you can begin to hack it. Finally, there's a universal truth about escaping poverty. Progress is not linear. You won't rise in a straight line. You'll move forward, fall back, recover, fall again, and rise higher each time. Setbacks aren't signs of failure, they're part of the journey. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is direction. As long as you're avoiding the next trap, reducing the next emergency, building the next bit of stability, you're winning. Escaping the hidden cost of being poor isn't about becoming rich overnight. It's about slowly, deliberately reducing the penalties that poverty imposes. It's about shifting from survival to control, from reaction to intention, from chaos to clarity. And one day, after enough small steps, you'll look back and realize something powerful. You're no longer being drained by the system. You're no longer trapped by the hidden costs. You're no longer just surviving. You're building. If you found this video valuable, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.